I never planned to document this, at least not in the way I'm about to. But after what I've seen, after what followed me home, I need some kind of record in case I don't make it through the week. It started 5 days ago when I arrived in the forgotten town of Morrow's End, a dying speck in the northern woods where only the desperate, the haunted, or the mad still linger. My reason? A 1987 missing persons case involving a forest ranger named Eli Moran, a story that never made it past local print, but which my late uncle, a retired journalist, had circled in red ink in his old notebooks with the words, "Not a man," scrawled beside it. I found those notes after his funeral last month, tucked between articles about wendigos, skinwalkers, and other things that claw their way out of nightmares, and something about the frantic tone of his writing, the obsession, the unease between every line made me think this wasn't just another cryptid tall tale. So I drove 6 hours to Morrow's End with a camera, a recorder, and a naive belief that I'd simply be walking away with a podcast episode or two. What I found instead was a place that felt like it had been bled dry by something old and watching, a place where the people didn't look you in the eye and wouldn't talk about the forest past sundown. The first to speak to me was a gas station clerk named Harley, a young guy with half-healed claw scars down his neck and a limp he wouldn't explain. And he told me flat out, "You'll hear whistling. You'll think it's a bird, but birds don't whistle like that. Don't go looking." That night, I stayed at the only motel in town, and sure enough, around 2:13 a.m., I heard it. A low melodic whistle coming from the tree line just beyond the parking lot. One long note, then silence, then a shorter one, like some broken imitation of a lullaby being played on a rotted flute. I didn't go outside, I'm not stupid, but I did record it, and when I played it back the next morning, there was something beneath the sound, something layered and deep, like a throat trying to mimic a song it didn't understand. And I swear, when I slowed the file down, I could hear my name whispered between the notes. Day 2, I hiked the trail Eli Moran was last seen on, following a line of old, nearly vanished ranger markers, and about 3 miles in, I found a clearing with no bird song, no bugs, not even wind, just silence thick enough to press against your skin like plastic wrap. And in the center of that clearing was a circle of stones with something burned black at the center, something twisted and organic like a deer carcass bent backward with its skull missing, and beside it, a wooden totem impaled into the earth with long strings of hair, human hair, tied around it in knots. I took photos, but the files corrupted before I could back them up, each one replaced with static and glitching black shapes that seemed to move when I stared too long. On my way back, I noticed a second set of footprints alongside mine, barefoot, longer than my own, and spaced in a way that didn't match any natural stride I'd ever seen. No drag marks, just prints like something was walking beside me the whole time, matching my pace in total silence. That night I left my recorder on again and caught 6 minutes of nothing. Then something breathing next to the mic, slow and wet like lungs filled with water, followed by another whistle, this one sharper, angrier. When I woke up, the power was out, and on the inside of my window, drawn in condensation, was a handprint, long-fingered, wide-palmed, too large for a man. I wanted to leave then. I should have left then, but I needed to know what happened to Eli, why his gear was found 18 feet up in a tree, why no dogs ever caught a scent, why locals kept telling me he asked it a question, like that explained anything. I interviewed the last living ranger who worked with him, a hermit named Callum who lives in a trailer rigged with salt lines and mirrors and won't step outside after dark. And when I asked him what Eli's question was, he only said he asked if it could ever be human again, and it answered. I don't know what that means, not yet, but last night something scratched the motel door from the outside. 5 long drags, too clean to be animal claws, too precise to be random. And when I looked through the peephole, there was nothing there but fog and a shadow that didn't move with the wind. I'm staying one more night, one last hike to the spot where Eli's boots were found, and then I'm gone. I just hope whatever's out there lets me leave. I parked the rental near the old ranger gate just after sunrise, hoping the early light would offer some illusion of safety, but the trees swallowed most of it within minutes of my entry, casting everything in that bluish-green dimness that tricks your eyes into seeing motion where there is none. Though in this place I was beginning to believe the motion was real. I followed the rusted trail markers north by northwest for 2 miles before the GPS began to fail. Not just a loss of signal, but full shutdowns. My compass spun lazily, and the backup battery pack drained from 83% to nothing in under 5 minutes, forcing me to rely on printed maps and the not-so-reliable gut feeling that something in the woods wanted me to keep going, and more unsettlingly, knew I would. The temperature dropped as I crossed a dry creek bed, and I mean dropped like I had stepped through a membrane into another place entirely, my breath fogging, fingertips numbing, while the forest grew unnaturally quiet behind me, as if sound itself had given up the pursuit. Eventually, I found it. The stump. They said Eli's boots were discovered on. Still there. Still hollowed. Blackened and splintered, like something exploded outward from within it. And as I examined it, I realized the moss and rot had been deliberately scraped away on one side, revealing carvings, dozens of them, letters, words, but not in English. I photographed them out of habit, but I didn't dare trace them with my hand, and as I backed away, I noticed 3 crows watching me from a low branch, not moving, not blinking, just watching, their feathers dull, almost gray. And as I moved past them, they turned their heads in unison to follow me, which for some reason chilled me more than anything else that day. I'd planned to head back by then, but the forest didn't seem to want that, because when I tried to retrace my path, I ended up back at the stump 3 separate times, even when deliberately walking in different directions. And every time I returned, the number of crows had increased. 5, then 7, then 11. All silent, their eyes glassy and wrong, like something was wearing crow shapes but didn't understand how to make them seem alive. By the 4th time, I was panicking, disoriented, dizzy. And that's when the fog rolled in, not creeping along the forest floor like a natural mist, but erupting from between the trees like breath from a furnace, thick and choking and warm against my face. I could see only a few feet ahead, and I was stupid enough to whisper, "Hello?" into it, hoping maybe another hiker would respond, but something did, not with words, but with movement, a shifting just beyond sight, too large for a person, too smooth for a bear. And then the whistling began again, fainter this time, layered, overlapping, multiple tones like a chorus of children learning the same tune at once, and I knew it was circling me. I ran, or tried to, but the forest doesn't play fair, and the ground seemed to slide beneath me, the trees reshaping behind my back. And then I tripped, on what, I'll never know. But when I hit the ground, I found myself face to face with a wooden mask half buried in the dirt, its features stretched and exaggerated, like something trying to mimic a man's face but failing miserably, with hollow eye sockets and a mouth stitched shut with sinew. I blacked out, don't know for how long, but I woke in complete silence, fog gone, light fading, and not at the stump, but on the motel bed, fully clothed, shoes caked in mud, twigs in my hair, and a trail of black smears leading from the door to the edge of the mattress, like something had dragged me inside and laid me there. I checked the camera, dead. The recorder, filled with static, then 37 seconds of wet breathing, followed by a voice, not mine, saying in a low, broken rasp, You found the mask. Now it knows your face. I drove out that night, didn't care about the gear, didn't care about the deposit on the car, just drove until I hit cell reception and booked the first hotel that didn't have trees in view from the window. But now, 3 days later, wherever I go, I hear the whistle, faint and growing louder each night. Last night someone knocked on my window on the 7th floor and I live alone. No one knows where I am. And when I peeled back the curtain, there was a smear of condensation with another handprint, larger now, fingers thinner, like they were stretching. This thing, whatever it is, isn't bound tomorrow's end. It followed Eli out once, and now I think it's following me. But the worst part? I looked at my reflection this morning, and for a second, just a flicker, I didn't see my own eyes looking back, just hollows, dark and deep, and something behind them grinning wide from the inside. I haven't slept in 2 days. Not real sleep anyway, not the kind where you wake up rested and whole. Because every time I close my eyes, I find myself back in that forest clearing, surrounded by those totem poles, not standing but kneeling, head bowed, breath caught in my throat like a hook's barb, and always before me is that mask, hovering without strings, turning slowly, staring without eyes, and behind it, something stirs in the trees, not walking but unfolding, like it was never meant to move in our kind of space, but does so anyway, hungry and patient, waiting for me to forget what it is. I tried checking into a hospital yesterday, told the nurse I'd been sleep deprived and thought someone was following me, left out the rest. But the moment they drew blood, the machines monitoring my vitals began glitching, and when they wheeled me into an observation room, the wall-mounted TV flickered on by itself, no input, just static. And then that damned whistle came through the speakers, faint at first, but rising in pitch like it was inside the wires, crawling through copper to find my ears again. And the lights dimmed just slightly as I backed out of the room and left without discharge, ignoring the confused shouts from the staff as I stumbled into the parking lot and sat in my car for 30 minutes before I could get my hands to stop shaking. That night, things escalated. At 3:14 a.m., I was jolted awake by something tapping the wall behind my headboard. Not knocking, tapping, like nails against drywall in a slow, deliberate rhythm. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps again, and when I finally built up the nerve to lean over and press my ear to the surface, there was a breath on the other side. Not warm, but cold, like opening a freezer and finding it full of rot. And it whispered in a voice that was mine but wrong, stretched, warped. You wore the mask. Even though I never touched it, never even picked it up. But somehow that doesn't matter anymore. I checked my voicemail this morning and found one new message. No number, just static. And behind it, a woman's voice saying something in that same twisted language carved into the stump. And though I didn't understand the words, hearing them made my nose bleed, and I swear the room grew darker as they played. I started researching the area again, digging deeper into old newsprint archives, and found a report from 1902 buried in microfilm. A traveling preacher had vanished after organizing a cleansing ritual in Morrow's End, leaving behind only a journal filled with increasingly erratic drawings, long-faced figures with no eyes, people with mouths sewn shut, and in one final entry, written in charcoal, the words, "It remembers names, it hates silence, it wears who it eats." And suddenly Harley's warning about the whistling made sense, because silence isn't safety, silence is invitation. And the whistling? That's its way of filling the quiet with something it can control. Since reading that, I've started hearing a second sound under the whistle, almost like teeth chattering or bones knocking together in time with it. And I think it's growing closer, like it's learning where I am no matter how far I run. I drove across the state line today, trying to put as much asphalt between me and whatever this is. But every motel I check into smells faintly of burned pine and iron. And always, there's something wrong with the mirrors. Reflections that lag half a second behind, shadows that don't belong. And at 5:22 this morning, the glass over the bathroom sink cracked from the inside and a breath fogged it from behind, revealing another message. Don't cover the eyes, it's watching through them. I don't know if that means me or someone else or the mask, but I've stopped looking into mirrors entirely. I left a disposable camera on a tripod last night facing my bed and set the shutter on interval. And this morning when I developed the film, the first few shots were normal, me sleeping, tossing, but in frame number 7, there's something standing beside me. Tall, emaciated, pale like uncooked meat, its arms too long, fingers brushing the floor, and its face is just a void, black where the features should be, except for the faint outline of a wooden mask hovering inches in front of where a face should be. And in frame number 8, it's leaning down like it's listening to my breath, and in frame number 9, it's gone. But my eyes are open and I'm staring directly at the camera, even though I have no memory of waking up. It's not just following me now, it's entering places it shouldn't be able to, bending space or slipping through something I can't name. And I think whatever Eli saw, whatever he asked, opened a door that never closed, and now it wants me to ask too, to invite it like he did. But I won't. I can't. Because every night it gets bolder, and I know if I speak to it, if I give it the acknowledgement it craves, it will answer. And once it does, I don't think I'll be able to tell where it ends and I begin. It's getting harder to tell where my memories end and its suggestions begin, like some fine black thread is stitching its thoughts into mine while I sleep, if I even sleep anymore. Because the dreams have become more like viewings, like I'm being shown things rather than imagining them. A spiral of trees hollowed out from the inside, each one filled with screaming faces pressed beneath transparent bark. A church in the woods, with pews made of antlers and ribs, and at the pulpit, something tall and still, wearing my voice as it preached in a language no throat was meant to shape. I've started hearing that language when I'm awake now too, usually in the moments just after I wake, or when I pass a window and see a glimpse of myself that doesn't quite move when I do. And always, somewhere beneath the sound, the whistle weaves through it like a spine holding it all together, low, sweet, patient, expectant. Yesterday, I checked my voicemail again, knowing I shouldn't, and this time there were 5 new messages, each just 5 seconds long, each beginning with the whistle and ending with a different voice whispering my full name, not just Darren, but the full thing, even the middle name I never use, pronounced perfectly by different mouths, my mother's, my childhood best friends, a teacher I barely remember, all speaking in tones they never used in life, flat, reverent, wrong. And I swear in the last message my own voice said it too. I tried deleting them, but the phone glitched and rebooted. And when it turned back on, the background photo, previously a picture of my dog, was replaced with the totem from the clearing, centered perfectly. And behind it, if you zoomed in, was something blurry in the trees, like the shape of a thing pretending not to be seen. I smashed the phone, bought a new one, switched carriers. Didn't matter. The next morning, it was there again. Same wallpaper, same messages, and now the battery drains every night at exactly 3:14 a.m. I checked myself in the mirror today, not a quick glance, but really looked, and I counted 7 differences. Small at first, but undeniable. My eyes are slightly wider, darker around the irises, my canines sharper, my skin a shade paler even though I've been in the sun. And worst of all, I smiled without meaning to. Not once, but twice. Wide, slow. A smile that felt like it didn't belong to me but was wearing my jaw like a glove. I booked a cabin out in the salt flats, far from trees, far from anything green, thinking maybe it was tied to the forest. That distance might weaken its reach. But the first night I woke to find mud tracked across the floor in shapes that resembled footprints. Barefoot, long-toed, like something walking on its pads, and carved into the cabin door were the words, "I'm inside the name you answer to." In perfect block letters, each stroke burned rather than cut, like it had been seared into the wood without heat. I scrubbed it out, painted over it, and that night I dreamed I was burying my own name in a hole, covering it in ash and salt while something in the trees screamed in frustration or glee. I couldn't tell which. I've been researching more and found a passage in a privately printed occult journal from 1911 that referenced a phenomenon called the emptying, where an identity is slowly hollowed out by a presence that wears behavior first, then voice, then thought, then soul. The process begins with hearing your name spoken by strangers and ends when you begin answering to the whistle without realizing it. And the final stage, they said, is when others start to forget you were ever someone else. I called my sister today, and she didn't pick up, but later I got a text saying, "New phone. Who's this?" But I've had the same number for 5 years. I emailed her and got an automated response that her inbox doesn't exist. I searched my own name online. Nothing. No social media, no articles, not even the podcast episodes I uploaded 3 weeks ago, as if I've been scrubbed clean from the digital world. But worse still, when I typed Darren K. Holloway into the search bar, it autofilled with Darren K. Hollowed and led to a single result, a PDF file titled "Those Claimed by the Singing Wood," with my photo on the cover and an old grainy still of me entering the woods 5 days ago. I opened the file and it only had one page, with one line. "You came alone. You leave opened." And below that, a symbol I now see in every reflection, faintly etched into my pupils like a watermark. I think I understand now. This thing doesn't just follow you, it undoes you, rewrites you in pieces, using the sounds of the world, the memory of others, your own voice against you until what's left isn't you anymore, but a vessel that remembers it once was. I'm still me. I think I'm still me. But I heard myself humming the whistle tune this morning while brushing my teeth, and I didn't notice I was doing it until I caught my reflection smiling again, only this time it didn't stop. I tried to record a video this morning, just a message to myself, proof of who I still am. But when I played it back, the person on the screen wasn't me, or maybe it was, but not how I am now. It was me from 4 years ago, hair longer, old shirt I haven't worn in ages, sitting in a different room entirely, somewhere I've never been, and the version of me on the screen looked up at the camera after 10 seconds of silence and whispered, "He's almost done with you," before smiling that wrong, wide smile and pressing a finger to his lips like he was guarding a secret only I wasn't allowed to know. I shut the laptop and threw it into the bathtub, ran water over it until the screen shorted out, but even hours later when the tub was drained, the steam on the mirror kept reforming a single word no matter how many times I wiped it away. Almost. It's not just memory loss now, it's memory replacement. I remembered my childhood bedroom today, the exact layout, the cracks in the wall, even the box of Legos under the bed. But when I called my father, the man who built it, he said I never had a room like that we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment my whole childhood, and I slept on a pull-out couch. And when I asked if he remembered the name of our street, he said nothing for a long time and then hung up. And now, when I try to call again, the number no longer exists. I think this thing, this presence, isn't just stalking me. It's rethreading me, unraveling everything I ever was and restitching it with its own patterns, feeding on the idea of me so it can wear me in public soon, pass unnoticed, whistle without suspicion, and be believed when it speaks in my voice. I've stopped going outside, not because I think it's safer here, but because I'm afraid of what people will see when they look at me. Because last night, when I peeked through the blinds, I caught a man across the street staring at my window, not blinking, just standing motionless in the dark, like he'd been carved there. And after a while, he lifted his hand and mimicked the exact whistle I've been hearing for days, perfectly, down to the strange wet click at the end. And then he smiled and walked away. And I swear to God his shadow stayed behind on the pavement for a full 10 seconds after his body was gone. The whistle is no longer external. It's inside my thoughts now, layered over everything I do, like background music I can't mute. And when I concentrate hard enough, I can almost hear the words beneath it, a sort of chant that's not spoken but thought through me. Names I don't recognize, places I've never been, and questions that make no sense. Things like, how many mouths can a name wear before it splits open? Or, if a memory breathes, does that make it alive? And I know they're not mine because they come with sensations, textures of bark against bone, the weight of wet antlers on my shoulders, the taste of soil and iron and old ash on my tongue, like I've eaten something sacred and rotten. I found something in my closet today, a piece of paper folded into a tight triangle, tucked between the wall and the frame, and on it was a sketch in red ink of a man with no eyes, just dark pits, his jaw unhinged and stretched down to his chest, mouth full of whistling smoke, and in the corner of the page was written, Day 23. Darren not responding to name anymore. Shape almost complete. I didn't write it, and I've only been documenting this for 17 days, which means someone or something is keeping its own record of me, measuring how far I've gone, how close I am to forgetting the last pieces of myself. Sometimes I feel my thoughts slow down, like I'm lagging behind my own body, like I'm watching someone else type this with my hands. And twice now, I've blacked out for hours and woken in strange positions, kneeling, palms open, mouth full of dirt and hair, or curled under the desk whispering the whistle rhythm into a dead phone. I know I need to leave, but I'm afraid I'll take it with me. Or worse, I'll leave something behind that's not quite done with me yet. A skin without a soul, a thing that looks and walks and speaks like me but has never once been me. I tried burning my journal last night, everything I'd written since the woods, hoping that maybe severing the narrative would break its hold. But the fire wouldn't catch, not even with lighter fluid, and I swear the pages felt damp with breath instead of water. When I tore one out and held it to the light, I saw an imprint, writing I didn't remember making in tight looping cursive I don't use, that said, names are doors. You left yours open. And below it, my signature, but slightly wrong, like a thing pretending to be me, forgot which way my hand moves. I don't know how many more pieces I have to lose before I can't come back, or if I already crossed that point and just haven't noticed. But tonight the whistle is louder than ever, and for the first time, I caught myself humming along. There's a moment right before you fall asleep where your brain gets slippery, where thoughts lose their shape and you can't tell if you're still awake or already dreaming. That's the moment it waits for. I know that now. Because last night, in that flickering in-between space, I heard a voice from inside my head, not echoing through the skull like thought, but standing in the center of it like a man in a room. And it didn't whisper, didn't shout. It just said, "Do you accept?" And I said nothing. But when I woke up, my lips were bleeding and my voice was raw like I'd been screaming for hours, and my window, which I'd sealed shut with duct tape, was open 3 inches with blackened grass on the sill and a single deer hoofprint on the floor beside the bed. One hoof, cleft and wet and wrong like it had too many joints. I've stopped keeping track of time properly, not that it matters, because whatever days I have left are being repurposed, stretched, and repainted with memories that aren't mine. Today I remembered killing something in the woods, dragging it into the clearing and offering it to the totem, its blood steaming in the cold air, except I've never hunted in my life, never even held a knife that long, but I remember the weight of the thing's body, the resistance of its tendons when I pulled, and worse, I remember being watched and feeling proud. My reflection is now fully disconnected. Sometimes I'll see it breathing when I'm not, or standing still when I tilt my head, and it always smiles when I get scared, wide and slow, like a teacher pleased with a student's progress. I recorded myself sleeping again, not out of curiosity anymore, but desperation, hoping to catch some final piece of evidence I could show someone, anyone. And this time, the footage showed me sitting up in bed, looking directly into the camera and saying, "It's not possession, it's replacement." Before tilting my head back and opening my mouth wider than I thought was physically possible, until the jaw cracked and my mouth filled with smoke, not rising, but pouring inward, like I was swallowing a chimney. I don't remember doing that, but the video exists, or existed, until the file corrupted and left behind a single frame. Now my desktop background, no matter how many times I change it. A still image of me kneeling in the woods, surrounded by others, tall, gaunt silhouettes with antlers and limbs too long, all facing away from the camera, all whistling with mouths I couldn't see. I haven't left the apartment in days. Food doesn't matter, sleep doesn't come. I sit at the center of the room now, salt poured in a perfect ring around me, though the salt keeps moving, and sometimes it arranges itself into symbols I recognize from the stump, each one pulsing faintly, like they're alive. I tried calling a priest, but the call never connected, and when I dialed again, the only response was my own voice on the other end saying, "You've already been blessed. It chose you." Followed by laughter, not cruel, but joyful, excited, like something waiting for a gift to finish unwrapping itself. I tried screaming for help out the window, once, just once, and the instant I did, the world outside froze, no distant hum of life, just stillness, complete, like time had been paused, and across the street every window reflected the same thing. Me, standing motionless, grinning. I don't think I'm decaying, I think I'm clarifying, peeling back the unnecessary layers until only the true shape remains. And this morning when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see flesh at all, just bark stretched over bone, knots where my eyes should be, and a thin slit of a mouth that opened with the whistle even though I wasn't making a sound. I tried stabbing myself last night, not to die, but to prove something still bleeds. And the blade bent on contact with my chest, like it hit wood, and the spot where it struck pulsed for hours afterward, like a second heartbeat waking up beneath my ribs. I've come to understand the final step isn't death, it's invitation, acknowledgement, acceptance. And now that I've resisted this long, it doesn't want to destroy me. It wants me to understand, to say yes willingly, to become the newest mouth in its collection, and I think I'm running out of ways to say no. The dreams are clearer now, almost instructional. Last night it showed me how to whistle in reverse, how to make the air curl inward and call things not meant to have names. And when I woke up, my mouth was open and something had been whispering through it for hours, a voice not mine using my teeth like instruments. I don't know how this ends, or if there's even a me left who could recognize an ending if it stood in front of me. But just now, outside the apartment door, I heard it knock, once, long and slow. And when I looked through the peephole, there was no one there, just fog, and carved into the wood of the door, still fresh and bleeding sap, were the words, "Are you ready to be remembered?" There's no point pretending anymore. Not to myself, not to anyone, assuming there is anyone left out there who still remembers me the way I was, because this morning I caught my own voice coming out of the radio, not a recording, not a transmission, just my voice speaking in the present tense, saying things I hadn't yet thought, narrating my movements as I poured black coffee into a cracked mug, as I blinked too slowly, as I stared at the wall where shadows now linger even after the light moves on. And when I turned the radio off, the silence that followed felt offended, like something had been interrupted mid-feast. The knock at the door last night was the beginning of the final phase. I know that now, because since then I've felt the world soften around me, its edges fading, its rules bending, time stuttering like a broken reel to reel. I lose hours now, wake up in different corners of the apartment, clothes soaked with sap or ash or dried salt crusted under my nails. And once, my hands were black with what I pray was soil, but smelled like old copper and rain. I dreamed I was a tree last night, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally rooted to the clearing, bark splitting open down my spine, birds nesting in my hollowed rib cage, and around me stood the others. Not people, not anymore, all whistling with mouths in their hands, in their throats, in their backs, and above us all something watched, something vast and eyeless and smiling, not with teeth, but with space. A smile made of gaps where things used to be, a grin made of what it took. The salt line in my apartment failed 2 nights ago, hissed and boiled away in seconds. And from that point on, the walls have begun to bulge and ripple, not visibly, not quite, but enough that when I place my palm against them, I can feel them breathing, slow and content like lungs submerged in honey. And sometimes I think if I press my ear to the drywall long enough, I'd hear my name being sung back to me from inside. But I'm too afraid to confirm that now, because part of me thinks it wouldn't be my name I hear anymore. I've stopped eating, but I don't feel hunger. I feel full, heavy, filled with something that's not mine. And I think whatever it's been feeding me all these nights has nothing to do with food and everything to do with memory. Because the more I feel like I understand what's happening, the less I remember why it matters. Yesterday, I opened a notebook to write something down. Anything, just to prove I still had a thought that belonged to me. And every page was already filled with tight, meticulous handwriting that wasn't mine but felt familiar, as if my own hand had been used like a pen by something else. And every line began with, "We remember," followed by fragments of lives I've never lived. We remember the boy who climbed the tree and never came down. We remember the woman who asked if the song would stop and learned it never does. We remember the names of the lost, because we wear them, because we keep them. The final page just said, "You were so quiet when we found you, but now you sing." And when I closed the book, I was humming again, the same damn whistle, but this time I could hear harmony in it, voices underneath mine, layers of tone that didn't come from my mouth but filled the room like a chorus warming up its throat. I checked the mirror again today, not out of fear but curiosity, because I needed to know if it was finished. And what I saw wasn't monstrous or alien. It was peaceful, smooth-barked skin the color of dusk, a crown of knotted antlers woven with hair, and where my mouth should be, a narrow slit that fluttered as the whistle came through, not forced, but natural, like breathing or prayer. I don't know if I can still leave this apartment, or if it even exists outside of me now, because the windows show only fog, and the door, once covered in scratches and warnings, now bears a single mark carved into the wood, a spiral that turns inward forever. Earlier today, someone knocked again, 3 short raps, then silence. And when I opened it, there was no one there, but the hallway was filled with the sound of 100 people breathing in unison, soft and reverent. And on the floor was a mask. Not wood, not anymore, but a mixture of bark and flesh, damp and warm to the touch. And it knew me the second I picked it up, folded itself into my hands and whispered without sound, "You are the space we needed, the story we lacked. Now you are remembered." I haven't put it on yet, but I don't think I need to, because when I close my eyes, I'm already wearing it. I'm already walking in the woods again, already calling others by name. And when they answer, they'll start to forget who they were too. And that's the thing no one tells you about the hallowed, about the ones who come back singing. They don't possess you. They don't haunt you. They invite you to remember what you were meant to become. And once you do, the silence can never find you again. I woke up outside, not in the apartment, not in my bed, just lying in the clearing where this all began, though I knew immediately it had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was occupied by tall, silent figures standing around me like ancient statues, their faces hidden behind masks of slick, polished wood that caught the morning light like wet flesh, and they were whistling. Not randomly, but in short bursts, rhythmic and haunting, like a language of breath and rot passed between trees. Every time the wind shifted, their whistles changed key, like the forest was retuning itself around something important, something ancient, and I could feel the sound move through my chest. No heartbeat, no panic, just a slow, warm thrum, like sap or static flowing through hollow bone. I tried to speak, but only air came out, shaped like words I didn't know. And one of the figures stepped forward, not the hollow-eyed man exactly, but something that had once been him, or maybe had become what he was, holding a mask different from the one I found, smoother, darker, more alive. And when he placed it at my feet, I saw flashes of people, hundreds of them, lost souls who had vanished into this forest and become part of the song, their memories layered like chords in a melody too vast for one mind. The others knelt, pressed their hands into the earth, and from their arms grew roots, slow and deliberate, fusing into the soil as the forest itself pulsed with warmth, and the song rose louder, not with words but with presence, something humming in the air, in the bones of the trees, in my own lungs. I stood without choosing to, and the others mirrored me, not followers, not puppets, just part of a single body moving in unison. And as I looked out past the clearing, I saw the town, distant but no longer separate, the streets curling inward, lights flickering with something unnatural, as if gravity itself was bowing to what we'd become. I realized then we were expanding, growing, not by force but through invitation, through dreams and memories and hunger disguised as comfort. People in the town had already begun to forget the shape of their days, already dreaming of moss beneath their feet, waking with bark under their nails and songs in their heads they couldn't name. A deer stepped into the clearing with too many legs and no mouth, its body rearranged by proximity, and it knelt beside me in reverence, like it understood what I was becoming. When I closed my eyes, I saw the pattern, something beneath the world, older than names, not a god but a system of decay and return, a root mind that fed on the collapse of form, on the surrender of identity, and I was no longer resisting it. When I opened my eyes, the others were gone, not vanished, but absorbed, flattened into bark and grain, their features pressed into knots in the trunks, still whistling, always whistling. I looked at my arms and saw roots coiling lightly around my wrists, my shadow swaying like a tree caught in phantom wind, and I understood. There was no original hollow-eyed man, only those of us who heard the call and stepped forward to teach it. each of us a new verse in the growing song. I am walking now toward the town, and in my wake the trees bend closer. The birds forget their names, and the world forgets its edges as the song begins again. By the time I reached the edge of town, I couldn't tell if hours or days had passed. My sense of time unraveled like wet string, stretching and snapping in loops. And the roads were empty, but not abandoned, just quiet, like the silence before an orchestra breathes in. Houses stood with their doors open, lights still flickering behind curtains that moved without wind. And I could feel the people inside, not hiding, but listening, their minds pressed softly against the edge of something enormous, their dreams having softened their bones just enough for the sound to start seeping in. I passed a man on his porch, sitting perfectly still, eyes glassy and locked on something I couldn't see, his mouth slowly shaping the whistle. Off-key, cracked, but trying, like a bird learning to mimic a storm. Children drew spirals in chalk on the pavement, and when they looked at me, their eyes had the dull shimmer of polished wood, like their faces were already being carved beneath the skin. I walked through it all not like a stranger, but like a returning memory, and everything, the streets, the lights, the flickering signs, felt brittle and temporary, as if the town was a shell that had already begun to molt. I reached the church and found the doors wide open, and inside the pews were full, every head turned not to altar but to the rafters, where roots had burst through the ceiling like veins reaching for air, pulsing with slow amber light, and from their tips hung masks, hundreds of them, each one whispering in a different pitch, creating a harmonic that made my teeth ache and my vision blur at the edges. And no one moved because they were all humming now, all part of it. And I realized the congregation was no longer worshiping. They were tuning, becoming instruments, bodies hollowing out to make room for sound. Someone turned to look at me, a woman whose face I vaguely remembered from years ago, a teacher maybe. And her mouth didn't open when she spoke, but her voice filled my head anyway. A smooth tone layered over the whistle like a harmony sliding into place, and she said, "The town was never real. It was just a waiting room for the forest." I wanted to argue, but even the shape of protest felt foreign in my throat, like trying to chew glass. And when I turned to leave, I noticed that my footsteps didn't echo anymore. They rustled, soft like leaves dragged through soil. Outside, more people had come out, barefoot and blinking under a sky that had darkened too early, clouds dragging like curtains. And together we walked, not as a mob, not as captives, but as participants in something that needed no explanation. The town dissolved behind us, not with fire or collapse, but with quiet forgetting, fences vanishing, roads blurring into moss, windows replaced by knotholes that blinked. And ahead, the forest waited, not darker than before, but sharper, more vivid, like stepping into the memory of a dream you forgot you had as a child. We entered without question, and as the last streetlight disappeared behind the trees, I felt the whistle again, louder, clearer, not just around me, but in me. And I realized it wasn't sound anymore. It was language. And I finally understood what it had been saying all along. Not a warning, not a threat, but a recruitment. A soft request whispered over generations until the right voice answered back. As we moved deeper, the trees bowed in greeting, and the others around me, neighbors, strangers, people I thought had left town years ago, began to peel away, one by one, stepping into hollows in the trunks that closed gently behind them like mouths accepting food. And their bodies didn't vanish. They flattened, becoming new layers in the bark, new vessels for the music. I kept walking, unable to stop, my body light, my thoughts scattering like seeds. And then I saw him, it, the hollow-eyed man, or maybe just what waits at the center of the spiral, tall and skeletal, no eyes, no face, just a mask of uncarved wood that shifted slightly with every breath I took, reflecting not light, but intent. And when I looked at him, I saw myself. Not the me I remembered, but the shape I had become, featureless and stretched, a body stripped of narrative, pure and ready. He raised a hand and pointed behind me, and when I turned, I saw the trail of masks I had left unknowingly, one for every moment I forgot my name, every time I dreamt in roots, every lie I told myself to stay sane, and I understood that I had been walking toward him my entire life, ever since the first time I heard the wind hiss through the trees as a child and felt something looking back. He didn't speak, didn't need to, because the final note had already begun rising around us, and as the air grew thick with whistle and hum and pulse, I realized I wasn't part of the song. I was the song, and I always had been. The hollow-eyed man did not move, yet I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, as if the forest itself inhaled, and the air thickened until every breath was a song, every heartbeat a drum, and I realized there was no place left to run, no story left untold. My body was no longer mine. It was a vessel tuned to frequencies older than memory, shaped by whispers carried on the wind and the slow creak of ancient roots growing deep beneath the earth. And as the totem's pulse echoed through me, I became aware of every other voice woven into the song. Those who had come before, hollowed and singing, their names dissolved into harmonies that swirled in the dark like living smoke. The masks that had once seemed like objects now clung to me, merging into skin. And with each breath I drew, I felt the lines between myself and the forest blur, until I was no longer a man but part of a larger mind, a pattern expanding beyond flesh and bone, a melody of loss and becoming. I tried to hold on to my name, to the fading shape of Darren, but it slipped through me like water through fingers, replaced by a series of whistles and rustles and clicks that spoke of centuries, of cycles, of lives forgotten and reborn as notes in the endless song. The other figures closed in, surrounding me with limbs that shifted from wood to flesh and back again, their eyes empty yet full, watching and welcoming. And in their presence I felt neither fear nor hope, but a strange peace, as if surrender was not defeat, but a homecoming. The forest grew louder, the canopy above folding down like a curtain, enclosing us in a womb of sound and shadow. And I understood that this was not an ending but a beginning. An eternal refrain played out across time, where each lost soul became a new verse in a song that never ends. My last thought was neither mine nor theirs, but something shared, a whisper carried on the wind. We are the hollow, and the hollow sings. And as I faded into that song, I ceased to be a man and became the forest's breath, its memory, its voice, forever echoing in the whistling wind through the trees.